book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Natcat Bookish Cafe. Today I will be doing my mid-month wrap-up for March. So today is March 17th. I'm filming this on my lunch break. It is a Friday, but the books I will be talking about are the ones I read through the 15th. I haven't finished any new books since the 15th, so today I will talk about the 5 books that I finished, as well as one book that I DNF'd, and then I will let you know what my plans for the remainder of the month are. All right, I'm gonna start with my DNF. I always like to get these out of the way. I did read this book in a reading vlog, so I will go ahead and link that. If you want to see some of my deeper thoughts on it, I'm going to be relatively vague. But that book is Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. I picked this up because Is Bailey Reading has it for her book club pick this month, and unfortunately it just didn't quite vibe with me. Even though I did DNF it, I ended up giving it 2 stars. Usually I don't rate my DNFs, but this one I did get over 50% through. I got to page 163, and so I felt like I should give it a rating because a 2-star did feel right based off of what I read. So this is pretty much a queer historical story. We're following a ghost who has been haunting this charter house or something along those lines for many years, and one day a family arrives and it's just about her kind of interacting with this family. Not really interacting with her, they don't see her or anything like that, but per the synopsis, she kind of falls in love with the mother of the family. I would say that that is a teeny tiny part of this book, so if you want to pick this book up for some sort of like queer romance or anything like that, definitely not, unless something happens in the second half of the book, because that was honestly kind of irrelevant to the story. It felt more like a hook that the synopsis was using to pull you into actually wanting to read the book. For the most part, I would say this is very much a character study, where we're studying our ghost in the present, in her past life, and as she studies this family. I did really enjoy the writing, and was also very interested in the past of our ghost. I believe her name was Blanca. So there was some parts of this book that I liked, but the majority of it, the remainder of it, anything to do with this family, with the present, was, for me personally, incredibly boring. So I decided that I just wasn't going to waste any more time on it. I'd already been reading it for quite a few days, and there was just other books I wanted to get to. For the first book I finished, it was actually an audiobook. I carried this over from February. I was probably going to finish it in February, but I had already made my end of month stats into their little diagrams and everything, so I didn't want to mess with those, and decided to just finish it on the first day of March, and that is Once Upon a K-Prom by Kat Cho. This is a YA contemporary story in which we are following a young girl who is in her senior year of high school, and she and her friends are kind of boycotting the prom in a way. They're not really telling people that they shouldn't go to prom, but they are asking that people maybe consider donating all of the money that they were planning on spending on expensive dresses and limousines, and donating it to a youth center in their area that had lost funding and was at risk of shutting down. So she is getting kind of a lot of hate at school because people aren't fully understanding their cause and what they're asking. They think that they're just anti-prom, but either way, she's not really planning on going to prom because of this. And one day her ex-best friend from childhood shows up and asks her to prom. What's special about this is that he is now a famous K-pop star. So this brings a lot of attention to her and her school, and honestly also the youth center, and we just get to watch as the two of them kind of rebuild their relationship. And of course, since this is kind of like a K-drama based story, there is a lot of surrounding drama around these two. I ended up giving this story 4 stars. I had a ton of fun with it. This was exactly what my brain needed at the time. I was feeling very tired and a little bit overwhelmed, and I just got a ton of joy out of this story. I really enjoyed our character and our K-pop star as well, and just watching them as they kind of relearned each other. I mean, I think they were 10 years old when they went their separate ways, so just watching them get to learn who the new them is and what's similar and what's changed, as well as just getting to learn what's important about, or what's important to the two of them and what they're really passionate about. Really enjoyed that. So I had a ton of fun. That was an audiobook and I definitely recommend it. All right, then my first physical read of the month was The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. And this is for a read along of The Bone Season that the BookStara crew is putting on. And I will, as always, when I mention this, link them down below. I believe we're going to read book 2 in May, so we get 2 months per book. So if you still want to join, there's plenty of time to do so. This is kind of a sci-fi fantasy based story, paranormal as well. So I guess sci-fi paranormal would be a better describer of it, or descriptor of it. And in this book, we are following Paige, and she is a clairvoyant, specifically a dream walker. She is able to remove her spirit from her body and interact with other people's dreamscapes, which can at times allow her to kind of see memories of other people. And this is a more unusual power. Clairvoyancy is pretty common within the society, but hers is a more powerful form of it, making her a relatively coveted person. She is part of a crew of clairvoyants who work in the underground. Being clairvoyant in this world is illegal, and at the start of this book, she is actually captured and imprisoned. And the story goes from there. I would say once she shows up at the prison, things become definitely spoilery to talk about. So I did discuss this in the vlog, the same one where I was talking about Briefly a Delicious Life. So if you want to see a little bit of my deeper thoughts, it's still not spoilery or anything, but you can definitely check that out. I ended up giving this a 4.5 stars. I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous at the beginning that I wasn't going to love this book, but I would say that it was a solid 3.5 for the first half of the book, and then the second half of the book really took off, and I really started enjoying our character more, as well as the plot points. I think the issue was at the beginning there was a lot of info dumping that was occurring, that was turning me off from the story a little bit, but once the author got all that info dumping out of the way, the story really progressed, and I am very, very excited to be getting into book 2. The next book I finished was another audiobook, and that's Monday's Not Coming by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is a YA thriller horror. Sometimes I blur the lines between the two of them, but we are following a young girl. I believe she's getting ready for high school. I don't think she's quite in high school yet, so maybe like middle school age, which is what, 7th, 8th grade, and her friend did not come back to school after summer, and she's kind of trying to figure out where her friend is. She's getting a lot of contradictory information. she feels that people aren't quite as concerned about Monday's disappearance as she is. So I believe that this one was also mentioned in that vlog. I mean, at this point, you might as well just watch that vlog. But I felt for like the first 40 or so percent that this book was definitely leaning more towards contemporary than it was towards the thriller side. And I was a little bit disappointed at that point of the story. But after that 40% part, things definitely started to escalate relatively quickly. The suspense of the story was growing. Our character was facing a lot more obstacles. We were following two different timelines in the present, where she's looking for Monday, as well as in the past when Monday was still there. So both in the present, people's behavior seemed to be escalating, and the bullying that the two girls was experiencing in the past was escalating as well. So that overall just added to the kind of uncomfortable feeling that you were receiving while reading this book, because it was definitely leading up to something pretty dramatic. With thrillers and stuff, I think the rating of the book relies pretty heavily on the ending. And I was really pleasantly surprised by this ending. I definitely had a few guesses as to what was going on, and I was wrong. So I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars because I really enjoyed the discomfort that it gave me. I really enjoyed the unexpectedness and impactfulness of the ending. I really enjoyed our character and her dedication to her friend and watching her grow as a person throughout this book. So a really wonderful read, definitely suggested. The next book I finished was a reread, and that is The Hanged Man by K.D. Edwards. This is the second book for the tarot sequence trilogy. I believe it's a trilogy. I read The Last Sun last month and gave it 5 stars, and I ended up giving this one 5 stars as well. In this series, we are following Rune, who is the last survivor of the Sun Court. About a decade ago, his house was raided and destroyed, and he and his companion were the sole survivors of that. Since then, they have been kind of picking up odd jobs here and there. In the first book, he is tasked with finding a possibly kidnapped nobleman, and while doing this, they come across a creature that has long since been seen as extinct, and in fact was seen as a myth. And this creature is incredibly dangerous, incredibly powerful, and it opened the door to the idea that there might be some relatively heavy corruption occurring within this world. In the second book, we kind of further get to explore the different houses, which are all based off the tarot cards, in case you didn't catch the title of the book, the tarot sequence. And we get to explore as Rune gets more and more drawn into that political world. Previously, he was very much an outsider of it. This community very much looks down on the victims of their world, which is very unfortunate because Rune did lose his entire family that night and was the victim of a very brutal sexual assault, and his community very much turned their back on him. He, on the other side, if I had to describe Rune in one sentence during this book, it would be the bitch, I'm a mother, because he is just building this family around him in these 2 books, and then just kind of strengthening his court, I guess you could say. He doesn't really have a court because his was destroyed, but he's definitely getting a lot of allies, and just that's one of the most heartwarming parts of this book. The found family aspect of it is pretty addictive. The political intrigue in this book was definitely escalating, so I'm very interested into getting to book 3 to see where the author is going to take it. I also am still continuing to enjoy the magic system in the story. It's definitely expanding, and just getting to see what new fun characters we are introduced to. All right, and the final book that I finished as of the 15th of this month is The King of Immortal Tithe by Ben Alderson. This is the second book to Lord of Eternal Night. It is technically more of a companion. You do not need to read Lord of Eternal Night in order to read this one, and if you read Lord of the Eternal Night and didn't want to read this, you didn't have to, because they're pretty separate. But this one technically takes place like quite a few years after the end of the Lord of Eternal Night. At this point, vampires have taken over the world, or I don't know if the entire world, but at least this area of the world, and humans have very much been confined to like small protected areas. In this book, we are following a man who lives in a place called Tithe. I believe it's called Tithe. And this is a kingdom that is protected by the elves. So pretty much humans just stay within the confines of this wall, and once a year the elves come and they select or a few elves select a mate to take back with them to the elven world, and in exchange they continue to protect the humans. So most humans really love the elves and they want to be chosen to be a mate of an elf, because one, they get to leave this little pig pen of humans that are surrounded by bloodthirsty vampires, and their families who get left behind actually get a better life. Our main character, on the other hand, very much does not like the elves. His family had warned him to protect himself and his sister from them before they died. He is actually dying as well. He has a disease that his parents had died from many years ago, and he has actually been sneaking outside of the walls to hunt vampires and drink their blood to stay alive. One day when the elves actually show up, one of the elves shows interest in his sister, but he prevents this elf from choosing her, and later that elf comes back to him and brings him to his world. So he's pretty much kidnapped by an elf. Now, the reason that this elf shows interest in our main character is because our main character touched this elf and did not die. This elf was born with a curse that anytime anyone touches him, even like in the slightest, they perish instantly. So he is very much interested in having our main character in his life so that he can experience touch for the first time. The story is actually based off of Hades and Persephone. Our characters are definitely thrown into some political turmoil, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the story. This elf is actually a prince, and is supposed to be the heir to the throne, but his cousins and grandmother, the current queen, are very much against him taking it because of his tendency to destroy things with his touch. And so the two of them are kind of battling against his family in hopes that he can take the throne, because they feel he is the only one who can really fight against all the vampires that are threatening to overtake the human world. I did really enjoy the romance of it. Our character at the beginning really despised our prince, so this is definitely enemies to lovers, but I thought that there was a very natural and gradual escalation to his feelings for this prince, and I thought once they were together it was very sweet. I thought the smut scenes were pretty decent. I feel like I enjoyed the ones in Eternal Night a little bit better, but I also felt like I had a stronger connection to the characters in that book, which plays a big part in my enjoyment or lack of enjoyment of a sex scene. But I did enjoy the world building in the story, as well as the romance that was present in here. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. All right, so those are the books that I have read so far. I'm gonna quickly go through the books I still need to read. I'm not gonna give a synopsis or anything about these books. If you want that, you can go ahead and check out my TBR for the month. Currently, I am working on A Strange Hymn. That's what it's called, right? By Laura Thalassis. This is the second book to Rhapsodic. I'm very excited that I'm finally getting to it. I think I read Rhapsodic about 7-8 months ago. So I'm only about 40-50 pages into the book at this point. So I'm still kind of reacquainting myself with the characters and the world since it's been so long. But, you know, I am very excited that I am finally getting around to that. As far as audiobooks go, I'm currently reading or listening to Hellbent, and I believe I'm about 60-something% through that book right now. So I'm making pretty good progress in that and am quite enjoying it. And that is by Leigh Bardugo. In a couple days on Sunday, a new round of Squash That series is starting. This is hosted by Is Bailey Reading and Kayla Ray Reads. And I do have some books that I'm hoping to read for that. If I do not finish A Strange Hymn by the time that starts, I'm gonna put it on hold and start it up again once the readathon ends on the 24th, I believe it is, and just go ahead and get started on the physical books because it's a little bit intimidating for me. So these are the 3 books I'm hoping to read. We have The Ippo's King by Grace Draven. Then we have, I'm doing this in the most awkward way possible, Escaping from Houdini by Carrie Maniscalco. And then the first of the novellas by Ali Hazelwood, specifically the Stuck Under One Roof. So I will be reading just one of these. And I keep forgetting this, but I also plan on reading volume 2 of Fence by C.S. Pacat. As far as audiobooks go, I am going to go ahead and continue Ninth House until I finish it. Otherwise, my hold on it will be up, and this book had quite a hold on it, so I don't want to wait or anything to finish the last 20% of it. Otherwise, the only book I have coming in right now is Home. This is by Nnedi Okorafor and the second book to Binti. I'm also hoping to read the third book in the series, which is called The Midnight Masquerade, something along those lines, as well as possibly reading Authority by Jeff Vandermeer. Now, neither of these books are currently available to me, but I'm the next person in line, so fingers crossed that they show up in the next week, and I have the opportunity to read them. Once the readathon ends, I'll go ahead and finish The Strange Hymn if I haven't finished it before then, and then I actually have 4 other potential books that I could pick up if I have time before the end of the month. So most likely I'll probably pick up either The Fae Keeper or Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, because these 2 will complete a series for me. I was really hoping to prioritize these 2 books because they were one of the few books that would complete a series for me, but when it came to physical reads, I just wasn't reaching for YA this month, but if I have the chance, I'll definitely try to get to one of those. All right, guys, so those are the books I've read so far and the books I'm still hoping to get to this month. Let me know down below what your favorite book of the month so far is and what book you're still really hoping to get to. As always, thank you so much for your support by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!